Welcome to the podcast, Badass Mother Hustler, where the grit, stress, and the beauty of motherhood and entrepreneurship meet. We'll share the realities and stories of what it takes to make it all work and still be a badass mother. Now here's your host, Maddie Yaka.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. Today I'm chatting with badass mother hustler Steph Blake. She's the mom of two, and she's the owner of the Blake Collective. She has such a cool story that I can't wait to share with you. In her first year of business, she had 8 businesses. She made a total of $53 in the first year, and it gets better though. In the first 3 years of her business, she ended up retiring her husband. So I can't wait to talk about it all. Thanks for coming on. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I am great. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you.
What a cool, you gave me a little bit of background. What a cool journey it sounds like. And I can't wait to dive into it with you.
Yeah, it's a really wild journey. I feel everybody's story is, But yeah, I mean, there's so many ups and downs. You want me to just talk through it?
Well, I guess to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family and where you're from and what your hobbies are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am from outside of Chicago, Illinois. I've lived here my whole life in the area, and I have a husband, 2 boys under 5, well, a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old at the time of recording this, and a dog who I call my 3rd child because he is a Vizsla. And if there are any Vizsla owners out there, these are very high energy dogs. So he is basically like my 3rd child. And for fun, that's a great question, because this, as an entrepreneur, is something that I have struggled with for a long time, having hobbies outside of business. So I love that you asked that question. But I love to read fiction books. I love to go on walks with myself, usually, if I can, if I can get that. And then my family. And then I took a break from kickboxing, but I will be starting that up in the next couple of months as well.
Kickboxing is so fun.
Yeah.
My one sister, for her birthday one year, she was like, I want everyone to come do a free class at my kickboxing studio. And so all of us sisters and our significant others came and did a kickboxing class, and it was such a blast.
It is. It is. I did it for a long time. I did it for many years before I had kids, and then life got crazy and I meant to go back and I haven't. You know how that is.
Life is crazy as a mom and
Yeah.
an entrepreneur.
It is.
Does entrepreneurship run in your family?
No, not at all. So I grew up in a very traditional household, I guess you can say. So my parents got divorced when I was in 2nd grade. So we lived with my mom, who was a single mom, and she worked anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week just to
Wow.
support us. My dad, he worked in retail. So he also, I mean, if you work in retail, it's minimum 40 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
So I just grew up with with parents who were working constantly, right? So that is what I grew up seeing, but neither of them were entrepreneurs. Funnily enough, now my dad actually has his own company, but it didn't happen for a very long time. And I actually help him do some stuff on the back end business side of his company. But growing up, I had nobody around me who was an entrepreneur. So when I started my business, I was like, what do I do?
Yeah. So
I have no
how
idea.
did you end up just jumping into it and doing your own thing if you didn't grow up in the mix of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, after I graduated from college, so I graduated in 2010. So that was still kind of in the midst of the recession. So I was just happy to get a job. So I got a job at an engineering company designing instruction manuals because my background was graphic design. So it was about as boring as you can imagine.
You said it, not me.
Oh, I absolutely did. And I was like, I need to do something more with my life. Now I'm sure AI creates all of those, but a real person was doing them before.
Yeah.
So I moved to the city of Chicago, started working at a digital marketing agency, worked there for about 3 years. And then I was just getting this itch to do something else. So the agency that I worked with, we actually worked with franchises. So we worked with franchisors, so the main corporate, and then franchisees as well. And I was sitting there every day and I was thinking to myself, I'm helping all of these other entrepreneurs grow their businesses. I can do this, right? It's no big deal. Anybody can do it, right? And then I started looking into it and I was like, ooh, I have no idea. I don't know where to even get started, right? The opportunities are endless when you decide that you want to be an entrepreneur. So one day I was on my lunch break. I was swiping through Facebook. There was an ad saying how to use your corporate skills in your own business. And I was like, okay, that's me. Like, let's do this. So I clicked on the ad, signed up for the training, bought the thing. About a week later, I had 2 different businesses that I had started because at that point I was just like so excited about this new world that I stumbled onto, this like online world where you can do anything.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really where things began for me. And at that time, I was also undiagnosed ADHD. So I had all of these ideas and I
So
had
that's where the 2 businesses started from.
that, that's where it started. Yeah, I started, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember. So I had an Etsy shop first, and then I also created, this was right after my husband and I got married. So I created this like directory for wedding professionals, and I was selling advertising space on it. It was the most random thing. It's just very random. I was just trying to find a way to get out of this job that I was in because I was like, I don't want to do this forever. Like I grew up, like I said, with a mom who worked all of the time. So I was like, I she did the most amazing job for us, right? But I knew that when I had kids, when my husband and I had kids, I didn't want to be working constantly.
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to have to go to a job, right? I wanted to
Be
decide
there.
what I want to do. Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So how did you then end up with 8 businesses in the first year? And obviously you didn't let just $53 of income deter you. So
Yeah.
like how do we move forward from there?
Yeah. So that first year, like I said, I was undiagnosed ADHD. I stumbled into this new and exciting world. So if you know anything about ADHD, like we need dopamine hits, right? So as you can imagine, it's nothing but dopamine when you realize all of the possibilities of like things that you can do. So I started all of these different businesses and I very quickly realized I loved to be behind the scenes and like setting up all of the back end pieces of the business. Like I loved to start the business. So like creating the website, setting up the automations, like setting up all of the tech. Like that's what I love doing, which is why I wasn't selling anything. I think that if I'm remembering correctly, that was almost 9 years ago now. I think that $53 came from a couple of sales from my Etsy shop and like one advertiser in that directory. And because I wasn't showing up, I wasn't selling, I was just playing with stuff behind the scenes. And then fast forward to 2018, I got pregnant with my first son, and I was still, so I didn't have all of the businesses. At this point, I was focusing on virtual assistant work. So I had a virtual assistant work. I turned it into an agency, but I was still doing this while I was in my job. So I very quickly realized, I mean, it's moms likely listening to this. When you are pregnant, especially with your first child in the first trimester, life drastically changes, right?
Yes.
And I very quickly realized that I needed to slow down. I needed to slow down. I needed to stop doing everything, or else I would have ended up in the hospital 100%. So I told myself, I need to, one, stop working as much as I'm working, excuse me, and two, figure out how to get out of my job before my son is born. So fast forward almost 9 months later, because I put notice in at my job 2 weeks before he was born. I left
You were like, "I have a
with
hard deadline,
right.
like, I know that I need to do it by this time."
Exactly, like, that there's no harder deadline than
Yeah.
a baby, right? So, yeah, that's what I did 2 weeks before, and then I left my job, and then I went full-time in my business and full-time with a newborn, which I don't recommend anybody do, because that was just a whole story in and of itself of just
Yeah.
how hard that was.
I mean, you are being a business owner for the first time, and you are becoming a parent for the first time. Like,
Yeah,
I pivoted from teaching to being a realtor and having a real estate team with my sister after my first. So, like, when I had my second, like, I was just learning how to juggle 2 kids, not how to be a parent. But geez, I can't even imagine you're going down 2 uncharted paths. Like,
yeah.
what were some of the obstacles or the stress
I
that you
mean,
went through?
it was such an interesting time. Luckily, thank goodness, my first son, he was the best sleeper. He was the best sleeper. So I lucked out there, honestly, because I was all about the nap time hustle. So as soon as he would go down, I was just like work, 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 work. And right after he was born, like they're little, I would just like sit on the couch, sit in the bed. He was next to me in one of those, like, I don't know, those little beds. I don't even remember what they're called. And I would just work on my laptop. So like at that point, like it was not hard. Once he started moving, it got a lot harder
Oh, yeah.
because like then you have to chase him. But again, like he was such a good baby and such a good toddler that I was able to set up, we called it the baby cage in my living room, like those little like gates or whatnot. And we just like, gated him in and I just threw all of his toys in there. And he would play in there for hours. So that was really when I was able to get a lot of my work done as well. But at that time, I was still doing a lot of client work. So it was hard, especially when it came to calls, because if I had calls like during the day or potential client calls that I was on, I would always try to schedule them during nap time. And I will never forget one time, this was before he was like really, really little, like maybe a month old or something. And he was swaddled in his crib. And I was watching him on the monitor as I was on this call and he rolled over and like he was face first on the mattress. And I saw him and I was like, I need to roll him over.
I know.
I was terrified. I don't even know how he rolled up. Maybe he may have been a little bit older, but it was so terrifying. So I had to leave that potential client meeting, get up, go roll him back over. By the time I got back, they had left. And then they sent me an
Oh.
email saying how unprofessional it was that I
What
had to do that.
did
Yeah.
you say like, "Oh, I have to run and check on my child real quick, like, give
Yeah.
me 5 minutes?"
I said, my child literally rolled over and he cannot breathe right now. I have to go check on him. And they just left. And
It
I
was
was like,
probably someone that is not a parent that didn't
yeah.
understand.
Right. I was like, thank goodness, because that's not somebody that I would have wanted to work with anyway. But I would say probably 8 months after that is when I kind of dissolved that agency that I had. And then I focused more on coaching and consulting, which is what I've been doing, I don't know, for the past 5 years, 5 years now, to help other people really streamline and simplify their businesses so that they can work in 20 hours per week or less. Cause that's what I had to do. That's what I
Yeah.
figured out. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
So how did you pivot from the agency to the coaching? Like, what gave you the idea?
So at that point, I had been doing it for, I don't know, a few years. And I just had people reaching out to me, asking me how I did this, if I would give them support and guidance and just like tell them how I did it. So I was like, oh, yeah, like I can do that. So I just started having conversations with people and then started charging for those conversations. And very quickly, I realized that's what I loved to do. I didn't love to be behind the scenes of other people's businesses. I like to do it for myself. That's one thing where I can just like kind of go in and test things and kind of nerd out a little bit. But it's completely different when you get to work with other people and see the massive successes and changes that happen because you are just there to offer them. Even it could even be one conversation that truly changes the trajectory of their entire life. And that after I started doing those calls and started working with people, I was hooked. I was like, this is what I am meant to do. This is how I'm supposed to support people in this life.
How did you get in touch with these people? Were these people you knew? Were these people like, were you sharing your story online and people were reaching out to you through Instagram and Facebook? How did you
Yeah.
find these people?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember because that was such a long time ago. At this time, I was definitely on Instagram. So that was my main marketing channel that I was on. I had also built up a lot of different connections and relationships with people. So I would do different podcast interviews. I would do interviews at like summits or events where there were other people speaking. So that was the main way that I was building my connections and my relationships. And then people would just refer me also. So after I would work with somebody, they would, like, for example, if somebody posted in a Facebook group looking for a coach, people would tag me and they would say, like, you have to work with Steph. She's amazing, but whatever they would say. So that it was really just connections that I had built, referrals. and then the organic marketing that I was doing on Instagram. That's how it really started.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Now, how many years ago was that? 8
That
or
was
9?
that was 2018. So like five and
Okay.
a half years ago.
So, I feel like that is the beginning of the online coaching and mentors and stuff with lots of people in that space now. How do you stand out amongst others? I'm just
It's so
wondering.
No, 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 it's so funny because at that time, it felt like there were so many people in it, and I think that's
Really?
the thing. Yeah, and I mean, COVID definitely accelerated it, don't get me wrong, because everybody started an online business, it feels like, but at that time, it felt very "saturated," quote, unquote, um, because you're just in it, you know? And even now, I'm such a different person than I was at that point, and I honestly don't even know who is in this space. I am one of those people where I just put blinders on and I stay in my own lane and I just go. When people have conversations with me and they're like, "Oh, do you know this person?" I'm like, "I have no idea who you're talking about." And that's not because I don't want to know about these people. I'm so focused on what I'm doing, and I know that if I start to veer off, one, it will take valuable time away from my day, but it will also distract me. And I could potentially go down a road of comparing myself to other people, which is not healthy for me. And it's not
Yeah,
productive either. It makes no
yeah.
sense. Right. So the thing that I've always done and I will always continue to do is just be myself because that is what people resonate with. When
Gotta
people hear
be
me talk,
authentic, baby. Gotta be
exactly.
authentic. Yeah,
That's it. That's the secret.
it is. Um, so I mean, there's lots of coaches, but it like depends on the niche that you're in. So if someone wanted to reach out to you, what type of person are they that they're reaching out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with online entrepreneurs they're either in two spaces, honestly. So they're either just getting started and they're just really overwhelmed with all of these ideas that they have or all of these opportunities, like I
8
was.
businesses.
All those years ago, I was like, yeah, I know, I get it. I was there. Or the person who's been in business for a while and they are also really overwhelmed at this point because they've been hustling, for lack of a better term. They've been trying to do all of these things. Maybe they've had some monetary success, maybe not, but the common denominator between all of those people is they're working too much. They're working too much and they're overcomplicating all of the pieces of their business, and that's the same whether they're just getting started or they've been in business for a while. The key thing is they're overcomplicating it, they're working too much, and they need clarity on how to move forward and what to do next. And
You're
that
like,
is what I
rule
help them
number
with.
1, no overthinking. Rule
Yep.
number 2, set a timer and you're not working for more than X hours this week.
Uh, uh, maybe. Depends on the purpose, but on the person. But yeah, I mean, it's so subjective. Like it's each person is so unique and their experience is so unique, especially when you're a mom in the season of life that you're in. Like for example, I have two little kids right now. It is much more difficult for me to work now than, for example, like if I had teenagers where they were just kind of like off doing their own thing. So when I do work with people, I take that into account because we, as entrepreneurs, we all have these really big goals of things that we want to do. But the reality is sometimes those goals are not realistic at the stage of life that you're in. And that's okay.
Yeah, that
Right.
is so true. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
depending on what stage of momming you're at, I feel like I am just now at the point where I have a little bit more freedom because my kids are 5 and 2, so they can go play with each other, whereas when my, son was younger, like, he was with me more and I was doing the nap time hustle like you talked about.
Yep. Yeah, I feel the same way. So my youngest he'll be 2 in December. So, like, I feel like we've now kind of reached that space where we have some breathing room where, like, they can entertain each other for a little while. So, like, if I had to pull my laptop out in the kitchen, I can do that and not be worried that one of them was gonna burn the house down, you know? Versus before where it was just like you have to be on top of them all the time. And then I know even next year, the year after, it's going to get a little bit easier in a sense. It's gonna be different.
Yes.
It's just different, right? I wouldn't necessarily say easier. It's gonna be different.
Yeah. So your business, when you pivoted, how did you scale it to the point that your husband didn't have to work anymore?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So at that point, like I said, I was working with I started the coaching side of the business. And then about a year after that is when like one thing I will say, when you're transitioning from doing services to doing coaching, those are two very different business models. So it's basically like you're starting over. Like you're still there, you're still the face, right? But the strategies, all the system, like all of it is completely different and unique. So it took me about a year to realize that, first of all, and then kind of figure out what worked best for me. So then after I was able to kind of figure that out, get into a groove of coaching, I started high ticket coaching. So that is what I focused on for about 3 years. I'm losing track of time, 2 or 3 years, something like that. And that was right around when COVID happened too. So COVID happened, everybody moved their businesses online, which for me, that was great because a lot of people were coming to me asking for
Yeah.
support. Not so great for other people, unfortunately. But um, shortly after that, we set the goal for him to leave his job in 2021. So I was like, "Oh, things are going really well. Like you don't need to be working anymore." 2021 came, we got terrified. We got scared. And I said, "Let's wait another year. Let's wait a year."
What was terrifying? Just the thought of everything financially is on you, or
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. It's like the money was there, don't get me wrong, but it was that feeling of security was gone. That safety net that we had, like in case something went wrong, something happened, like we were screwed. Like
yeah,
obviously not because his background is in nursing, so he can get a job anywhere.
yeah,
But it was still like that. There was a lot of work that I had to do with my mindset. I had to do a lot of healing, inner healing, to remind myself that no, it's actually okay, and that I trust myself to do this, and that I'm great, and I can do anything, right? So there was a lot of work that I had to do around that. And then, like I said, 2021 came and left. At the beginning of 2022, I said, you know what? This is it. This is the year that it's happening. And I said, by my birthday, which is April 18th, I said, you are leaving your job. You are putting in your notice. I don't care what's happening in our life. There's never going to be a good time. We are
true
going to,
that.
there's never going to be a good time. Right. So 2 weeks before my birthday, or no, I think on my birthday, or maybe the day after, he put in his notice. And then 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my second son.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, and the funny thing about, well, not the funny, like it's just such a wild story because at that time, like his company was paying for our health insurance, right? Like health insurance, life insurance,
Oh, I know that.
all of these different things. So we had started to obviously look into that, right? And little did we know, when you're pregnant, you need special maternity insurance. We didn't know about that because for my previous pregnancy, it was just all covered and we didn't even think about it. So I had to sign up for my own insurance, and then the family had to be on their own insurance. So, like, basically overnight, our insurance doubled, which was
That whole thing is a
like,
nightmare. Like, when I
it
had
is.
my first, I was teaching and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is great." I think when I gave birth to her, I only had to pay, like, an extra $3,000, and
Yeah.
then I had my second, and my husband has his own business as well, and at that time, I was a realtor, so I had my own business, and I gave birth to my second, and I think I paid, like, $10,000, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"This sucks."
Yeah. It's totally different. So, not just like the monthly payment that you're paying, but then the payment that you have to make after you actually have the baby.
I
It's
know.
it's like all of these things that you don't even think about and you almost take for granted sometimes. But I I wouldn't have it any other way because him staying at his job was not worth it for just insurance, because it's
No.
allowed us to do so many other things, and that's a big thing that holds a lot of people back, understandably, because, I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive, there's a lot of research that goes into it, but
So, does he, like, work a job for fun now, or
yeah, so no, he is a stay-at-home dad. He's been doing that, so almost, well, I mean, since then, what's that, like
Yeah.
2 and a almost 2 years? 2 and
Yeah.
a half? I don't know, however long it's been. I'm losing track of time. So, no, he's been doing the stay-at-home dad thing. He realized that he was not cut out for nursing. Like, it was not the road that he wanted to go down, and now he's trying to figure out what he wants to do when he grows up. So that's kind of the point that he's at. He wants to do something on his own, but he doesn't know what. So he is at this point in his life and his journey where he's helping to do stuff around the house, help take care of the kids and whatnot. But then also, like I said, we're kind of at this point where the kids are getting a little bit older to where he can start to kind of take some time to figure out what he wants to do for himself, which I think is great.
Yeah. So, with the age that your kids are at, and your husband is now a stay-at-home dad, what does a typical day look like in your house, and like for work for you and the whole family vibe?
Yeah, so there's no such thing as a typical day.
Yeah.
And I mean, frankly, it's so different every day because it kind of depends what's going on with the kids, what's going on in our life. Like I personally like to do a lot of my work on weekends because
Oh,
my team isn't working and like it's really quiet. Like I'm not getting a bunch of emails. So whenever I have to do a lot of focus work, I like to do that on the weekends. And then during the day, so I like to wake up earlier. So like between like 5:30, 5 to 6, something like that is when I like to wake up. I just get a start, take a shower, do all of that, and then I will go do any of like my high priority tasks. So like anything that I know needs to get done, I will do that first, just so that I can what's that saying? Like kiss the frog or something like that.
yeah.
Kiss the frog.
Are the kids
And
still asleep at this time?
usually, so my oldest has started waking up earlier, which I am not loving,
I
but
know.
uh they're usually asleep until, like, at least 7. My oldest has been waking up around 7 lately. He used to sleep in until, like, 9 or 10, which is great.
I know. And then it just changes. I'm like, gosh, what happened in your little
Yeah.
body that now you want to wake up so early?
Yeah, like, literally last week, he started waking up at 6 and 6:30. I was like, "This is mommy's special time. This is my alone time. You need to go back to sleep."
Yeah.
Um, but my youngest still sleeps until, like, 8 or 9. So then it's just like going about the day doing things. Like sometimes my oldest, he goes to school 5 days a week now for 2 hours. So sometimes he'll want me to take him to school, pick him up. So like I'll do that, hang out with them, play with them, like cook with them. So I just try to give them as much attention and support as I can during the day because I want to be there. I want to be with them. I
Yeah.
want to hang out with them. But then also find schedule my work in a way that makes sense for me to do things like this, right? Hop on calls, do my focused work time. So I try to, whenever I'm trying to schedule focused work time, like I said, weekends are my favorite just because I can like get all of my stuff done then. And then after people go to sleep, usually
Yeah.
is when I'll try to get a couple of other things done because, nobody's going to run in and tell me they need me to get them a snack or something. I don't know.
Yeah, the snack thing is for real.
Yeah.
My daughter just started kindergarten, but before that, I had them in daycare 3 days a week, and then they would be home with me the other 2 days, and on the days that they were home with me, it was, like, nonstop, "I want a
Yeah.
snack, I want a snack." I'm like, "Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I'm out of snacks, no more
Yeah.
snacks."
I just got to the point where in our pantry, I just moved all of their snacks to the bottom shelf. I was like, "Just get whatever you want. Don't
I'm
care."
like, How do you survive daycare
Right.
when it's one snack, then lunch and one snack?" But then with me, it's like we're having a snack every 20 minutes.
Yeah. 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 I know. But I mean, honestly, the other part of that is so my youngest, he's wild. He's a wild man and he goes. And he's literally the exact opposite of my first son. So if I would have started my business with my second son, I don't think I would have been able to do it, honestly, because he is just like shooting around from one part of the house to the other. So usually the majority of the time my husband will just like hang out with him throughout the day because he's like all hands on deck for most of the time. And then my mom also comes over. She's retired now. So she'll come over and spend time with the kids a couple days a week too, just to hang out with them.
Yeah, so you're not working like 9 to 5, your
No.
schedule just kind of flows, and you might be done at 1 o'clock one day, or
Yep.
it might be a little bit later on other days.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, my focused work time, like I always schedule calls. That's really my main focus. That's because nobody else can do that. Right.
Yep.
And then the other tasks I will either delegate, automate, or just not do. So I'm really cognizant of the work that I'm doing and making sure that any work that is scheduled for me to do, I am the only person that can do that, right? If I can give it to one of my team members, I have a very small team. If
I
I
was
can give
gonna
it to
ask, how many people are on your team?
yeah, so I have 2 part-time virtual assistants. So they work uh one works about like 5 hours a week. The other one works about 10 to 15 hours a week. And then actually yesterday, I just hired a new operations manager. So she is going to take off a lot of like the work that I have so that I can continue focusing on higher level tasks to scale the company.
Yep.
But very
Um,
small, very, very small.
yeah, yeah. And when you gave birth, I think it was to your second and you pivoted to coaching, am I right? Or was it
That
your
was my
first?
first.
Okay.
My first,
So
yeah.
when you did that, did you give birth and, like, take time off of work, or did you just dive right back in?
I just dove right back in because I didn't know what I was doing. Honestly. I I had never been a mom and I had never had a business, so I didn't know how to do both.
Yeah.
And at that time, like, we still needed my income, so it wasn't like like, I left that job knowing that I could pay my portion of the bills. So, I knew that I still had to pay these bills, and there was, again, a lot of mindset stuff that came up with that, like, so much where I felt like if I wasn't working, wasn't going to make money, like, I that was a big hurdle that
Yeah.
I overcome. Um, so, yeah, I maybe I took a week off. I honestly don't remember
Yeah.
at
You
this
just
point.
blacked that time out?
I kind of, yeah, because it was such a weird time in my life because it was like all of these like really significant things were happening at
Well,
one time.
you're also not getting any sleep with a
That
newborn.
too. Yeah, that too, that too. So I was just kind of in survival mode, honestly, and I was just doing whatever I had to do at that time.
You mentioned the mindset stuff a couple of times. Did you hire someone to help you with that, or did you, like, YouTube stuff, or how did you overcome that?
Yeah, so initially I did not. I was just trying to figure it out on my own, which I don't recommend doing. Eventually, I did hire a couple of coaches to work with to help me through it. And I got to a point where I realized like I had done a lot of work. I've been doing a ton of different type of like healing work to work through childhood traumas, to overcome different mindset blocks that I had. And eventually I got to a point where I was like, I don't need to hire another person to tell me how to do this. I did, however, realize that therapy was a good idea. So I did start to go to therapy just to more than anything have somebody to talk to about
Yeah.
all of the things that were going on. So it's like once a week I just meet with somebody and I tell her what's going on in my life, and then she's like a sounding board. And I think that's really important, especially when you're doing all of these different things and it's and somebody from an outside perspective. It's not like talking to a friend or a family member who's biased, right? So, I always recommend having somebody outside of your circle, whether that's a coach, a mentor, a professional therapist,
Yeah.
or whatnot
Yeah.
helping you. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so before we pivot to our rapid fire 5 and 5, I guess my question is, as entrepreneur moms, we experience motherhood differently than 9 to 5 or stay-at-home moms. So what do you think is the beauty of being an entrepreneur mom?
Doing whatever you want when you want. And that I'm gonna be honest with you, that was a hard thing for me because when I was in my 9 to 5 job, I would sit in my little cubicle and I would look out. There was a grocery store across the street, and I would see these people going to the grocery store at like 11 a.m. And I was like, oh, I would love to go to the grocery store at 11 a.m. What's that life like? And that was the thing that I was fantasizing about then. Now I hate to go to the grocery store. I do Instacart pickups because so, but like the thing that I didn't realize in that time was what I wanted was freedom to control my time and my schedule and to really do what I wanted when I wanted to. So, like I said, for example, now I wake up when I want to. I don't necessarily have to set an alarm if I don't want to. If one of my kids gets sick, like last week, my youngest was sick. He had a really high fever. I would just canceled all of my calls for the day. I said, sorry, my son's sick. He's my first priority in different language, but
Yeah.
they knew that's what I meant. And if I had a job like that, probably wouldn't have been possible, or I'd have to take a sick day or a vacation day or something, you know? So really that flexibility of living life on my own terms is the most important piece because everybody should have that.
You only get one life, and you should live it now while
Yep.
you're young or while you're middle age and not wait until after you retire, and then you have, like, 8 years to live your life.
Right.
Live it
Exactly.
now.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy because it's not,
No.
but it's that saying, it's not easy, but it's worth it, or whatever the saying is. Because there's a reason why so many people aren't entrepreneurs because it's hard. It's it's hard. But if you dedicate the time and the energy to put in the work, the payoff is well worth it. Absolutely.
Entrepreneurs are a special breed, and entrepreneur moms are an even more badass breed.
That is accurate, 100% accurate. Yep. We're
Yeah.
doing, and I'm gonna just add to that one more level. Single entrepreneur moms are a whole other level because I work with a lot of single moms, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know
That's
how you
someone you
manage
don't
all of
wanna
it.
mess with.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So, what does your ideal chill day look like?
Great question. So I don't drink coffee anymore, but I like to drink decaf, which is
It's the
interesting.
taste and the smell,
It
right? Like,
is.
I
It
love
is.
how coffee smells, and I like to
It
sip
is.
on something, so I totally get that.
Yeah, that's it. Before I stopped drinking coffee because I had drank coffee my entire life. I cut out caffeine after, well, when I had my second child, and then I just stopped. But I was like, I really want a cup of coffee, but I don't like the jitteriness. So that's what um I love to do. And then if it's a nice day, go outside, sit on my porch. I love to be in nature too. That's a big thing. And living outside of Chicago, there's not a ton of that where I am. So hopefully we'll be moving to a more nature area. And then again, it's like this is where it's not much different than my working day because I can just choose what I want to do. So if it feels really fun and exciting to me to play with my kids or go for a walk with them or take them to the park or go walk and get ice cream, that's what we'll do. If I feel like opening up my laptop, writing an email because I feel inspired by something, that's what I'm going to do. So that's really it. And it's just kind of like taking it moment by moment and just doing whatever I feel like.
I love that. I love taking it moment by moment.
Yeah, that was a hard thing for me to learn as
Yeah.
well.
I'm
Very
trying
hard.
to slow down in this end of 2024
Yep.
because as an entrepreneur, I think you mentioned it, you feel like you always need to be working. I'm just trying to slow down more and take it moment by moment.
Yep. Yeah, that was a big thing that I had to like undo in my programming was to realize that I don't have to be working all of the time. I created this life for myself so I don't have to be working all of the time,
Yep.
right?
So,
Yep.
what are you currently reading or listening to?
That's great. So, I actually just found this app. It's called Headway. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it summarizes books in like about 15 minutes. So
Wow.
it's like cliff notes for books. And so I do that with different business books. So I love to read books, but I just don't have the focus to usually read an entire business book. So I really like that app because it will just like I was folding laundry last night and I was listening to this book and I was like, "Oh, I just listened to like 3 books in the time I was folding this laundry." It was great. So I love doing that, and I'm reading currently a book, a fiction book on my Kindle. I don't have it near me, so I can't remember the name of it, but I think it's Catherine Gilbert is the author. Something about happiness. It's a Netflix movie now.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Happiness for
Yeah,
Beginners, I think is what it is.
that sounds familiar. I'll have
Yeah.
to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to read too, so I always like to
Yes.
hear what people are reading.
Yeah.
What's your favorite app or tool you use as an entrepreneur, a mom, or both?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I mean, I'm going to be a little bit biased because I have my own software called the Simple Business Suite that simplifies software. So that's definitely one of my favorites to use in business. For life, well, I mean, Amazon.
Yeah.
I love Amazon Prime, Instacart. We do Instacart pickup for our groceries. Those are like really the the main
You don't have
ones.
Instacart deliver it to your house?
So funny story about that. We used to do that, but I realized the people who were doing the shopping, they weren't doing a very good job. And they would say that a lot of the things were out of stock when like butter is not out of stock. Like
Okay, that's ridiculous.
and it kept happening over and over again. And I realized once you do the Instacart pickup, it's actual people who work at the store doing the shopping for you. So they know where all of the things are at. They do a much better job. So sorry to anybody listening to this who's an Instacart shopper. But
You just hacked that.
I did. And you also get credits back too. So I think you get like 10% back or 5% back, whatever, when you do the pickup. So all I have to do is like drive and pick it up and I get all these credits. So it's great.
Maybe I should do that because I at first I was using Instacart and I loved it. And then I started realizing because it would notify you when they're on the way to drop it off. And I was only like 15 minutes from the Wegmans, but it would take 30 minutes or 35. And I realized that they were like dropping off other people's stuff, but I had
Yep.
frozen stuff and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I would go in and say, like, I want a refund on these frozen items because they're melted. So then I finally was like, it's not worth it. And I didn't renew it, but maybe I should do the
You,
Instacart hack.
you should do the pickup for sure. Yeah. And that same thing was happening for us. Or like we would get somebody else's order because people do, and I understand doing the shopping from, but I was like, I'm just gonna go drive. I have to go there to pick my son up. Anyway, it's like on the way to school pickup. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What is the song you blast the shit out of if entrepreneur mom life is too much for you that day?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question.
Man, there's not
I
some
have
song that you just turn on and rock out
so
to?
okay, so there's I don't listen to music a lot. I'm weird. I'm weird. And I truly think it's an ADHD thing where I just get like too distracted. I love Taylor Swift. I've been a Swiftie since the beginning. She's the same age as me. So like basically anything Taylor Swift. But there's a song by Britney Spears called Work Bitch, I think.
Yes!
That's the song, especially when I am working out and I'm like at the gym. That is the song that I will just blast over and over again if I need like a pick me up.
Yeah, that's so funny. So many of the entrepreneur moms I've been talking to have said Taylor Swift. It's actually so funny, maybe because we're all the same age, like in our mid or
Probably.
early 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. Yeah. I mean, we grew up listening to that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
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 What is some advice you can give a struggling entrepreneur mom?
Best thing that you can do is stay focused on where you're at right now. And remember that you are in the exact right place where you're supposed to be in your journey. A big thing that I see come up for people, I mentioned this before, is like comparing yourself to other people. So you'll go online, you'll look on Instagram, see all these people talking about how successful they are, how they've accomplished all of these things, but we have no idea what's happening behind the scenes of their business. I can't tell you how many people since I started my business have stopped their businesses altogether. They've ended up in the hospital. Some have died, truly, which is so
Wow.
terrible.
Yeah.
Others have gotten divorced, right? Like there's so many things happening behind the scenes of other people's businesses that we have no idea. We have no idea. So remember, stay in your own lane, focus on what you're doing and enjoy the journey. That's another hard thing that was very hard for me to do. And I mean, some days it's still a struggle, honestly, but remembering that there really is no destination, right? Because you reach your goal and then guess what? You just come up with a new goal, right? So it's so important to remember, and this comes back to those little moments that I was talking about every day, right? Like enjoying those little moments, enjoying the journey, because that's really where the magic happens.
I love that. I love enjoy the journey. Like you're the first person that said that. And that is so true because everyone's journey is different and it's not easy, but it's awesome.
It is. It really is. Yeah. And one little hack that I've been doing every day is at the end of the day. I actually got this from that book that I was reading. That happiness book is to ask myself, what are three good things that happened to me today? And that just it helps you stay grounded, it helps you stay in the moment, and it helps you stay really grateful for all of the good things that are happening because as moms, as entrepreneurs, there's a lot of quote unquote bad things that could happen. There's a lot of overwhelming stuff that we take on every day, but if you can again stay grateful for one, you're alive, 2, your children are healthy at somewhat,
Yeah.
right? And you have a roof over your head. Like that's more than a lot of other people can say.
Well, also as entrepreneur moms, I feel like we're always like rush, rush, rush. And what you just said at the end of the day is to reflect. And reflection is important.
It really is. It really is. And that actually just reminded me of something. I'm going to go back to that question about the app, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was actually a very recent thing that I've done because I just found it. I downloaded this app on my phone called Burnout Buddy. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
No.
it allows you to basically create schedules for when you want to not be allowed into your apps. So
Ooh.
I have created schedules. It's literally called like no business allowed. So from I think it's like 6 p.m. until 7 p.m. the next day, it does not allow me into any of my business apps. Like it literally grays it out. And when you try to click on it, it says you cannot come into this app. So I'm going to test it out at different points throughout the day as well. That's the only schedule that I've created, but that's a really great thing for people who find themselves getting distracted or just like randomly clicking on TikTok or Instagram and just starting to scroll and getting
Getting in
stuck
the rabbit hole.
Exactly. Exactly. There's another thing where you can do is if you're on a specific app for a certain period of time, like if you're on an app for 10 minutes, it'll say, okay, you're done, and it'll kick you out of that app, which I love. I love, I love, love.
Yeah, because you don't realize like how long you're in something. So I'm never watching reels or anything during the day, but when I get into bed at night, I might be
Yep.
like, "Oh, like it's 10 minutes before or 15 minutes before I normally go to bed. I'll just look at some reels." And then I don't know how
Yep.
people lose track of time, but then I'm like, "Oh, 30 minutes just went by.
Yeah.
Like, what?"
Yeah. And the conversation about bed made me think about that because that's what I would do too. I think everybody does it. We're just like sitting there, we just open our phone, we're not even thinking. And we're just like,
Yeah.
which the apps are designed to do that. So they're doing a good
Yep.
job.
Yep. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the podcast today and share your journey and give everyone such great nuggets of inspiration. What is like, if people wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to find you?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, theblakecollective.com. It's on the screen if you're watching this on a screen. Or
Yeah.
you can also find me on Instagram. My handle is the Blake Collective there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. And I'm going to leave everyone with a quote like I always do. And that is your passion is your greatest asset. Use it to fuel your hustle. And I will see you all again next time.
Thank you for joining this episode of Badass Mother Hustler. If you loved this episode as much as we did, and it left you feeling inspired and empowered, give us a quick like and subscribe, and we'll invite you back to our next episode. And be sure to share us on your socials and visit our Instagram, Badass Mother Hustler Podcast. We'll see you next time.